Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our monthly DAC Webcast. I'm Michael Hackworth, Program Manager in the Division of Assessment Support. I have several guests with me today that will be presenting throughout our webcast. Beside me, I have Dr. Kyle Lee from the Office of Teaching and Learning, who will be here to present on the standards revision process. Later on in the webcast, Jennifer Stafford, Director of the Division of Assessment Support, will be joining us. And taking questions today, we have Pam Powers. And just a reminder, if you do have a question throughout today's webcast, please email that question to dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Our agenda today, we have a few things that we would like to go over. Again, as I mentioned a minute ago, we have Dr. Kyle Lee here to talk about the standards revision process. Dr. Lee was at our recent SCAC meeting and presented on the topic, and we felt that this would be a really good topic to share out with DACs on, how standards are revised and the process that's involved. Then we will move into EOC field test. I cannot believe that EOC field testing begins next week. Our 2-week window is April 16th through the 27th, and that has rapidly approached upon us. And then we do have 1 or 2 K-Prep reminders that we would like to go over. And then, of course, as we go through these, we will be here to answer any questions that you may have. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lee, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about the standards revision process.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Lee. I'm the Academic Standards Coordinator here at the Kentucky Department of Education. Just wanted to go over with you this morning a little bit about the standards revision process, why we're doing some of the things we're doing, and where we currently stand in that process. As most of you know, in April of last year, Senate Bill 1 was signed into law. The bill requires standards revision every 6 years on a cycle. And there are really 6 key points or main themes that the bill asks us to look at or adhere to when we are revising the standards. The first of those is that we want to ensure that the standards focus on the critical knowledge and skills that students will need to be successful in not just the state of Kentucky, but in the global spectrum, on that global economy. Next, the Senate Bill 1 asks us to make sure that there are fewer standards, but that the standards we are developing are more in-depth or rigorous. Also, they want to make sure that these standards are more clear, concise, so that no matter who looks at a standard or reads a standard, whether it be a parent, a teacher, an administrator, or even a student, they are able to understand what that standard says and communicate its expectations. Further, we want to make sure that these standards are based on evidence and international benchmarks. So we're looking at evidence not only in academic journals and things of that nature, but also our international evidence. And lastly, but not least, we want to make sure that the standards are aligned, not just horizontally, but vertically also, so that when a student enters school in kindergarten, it makes sense, the progression as they move through graduation. So that you're aware, the following standards are what we are currently looking to revise, review, and develop, or going to begin revision on. Health and physical education, English language arts, mathematics, historical and cultural influences of the Bible, computer science, and social studies are already in that process or have begun that process. We anticipate the start of world languages and library media sometime in the summer or possibly in the fall. For those of you who like to see the 6-year cycle, on your screen you'll see that progression over the 6 years. You'll note that in 17-18 you have mathematics ELA, physical education, and the career studies, which are our health and PE, computer science, and we also had the historical and cultural influences of the Bible. As you can go to the next column, 2018-19, the last 2 boxes down there, you'll see that we start our world languages and library media. The following year, 2019-2020, we actually will not be revising any standards. We would want to take a breath in that year, kind of give everyone a break. In 2020-2021, we will begin our science standards revision. And then in 2021-2022, our arts standards will begin the revision process. Again, 2022-2023, similar to 2019, is a year where we will have that moment of taking a breath before we begin the process over again. So many of you may be curious, who's involved in the standards revision process? Who are the people that are making the decisions? Well, first and foremost, the general public. We do ask and seek the public's comments and feedbacks regarding our standards. We ask that you help us in that endeavor to get the public engaged, get your parents and your community members involved. A lot of those surveys, which are administered through a third party, the ARC, when they put the surveys out, it's usually posted in the commissioner's emails and also through Kentucky Teacher and many sorts of media. We ask that you share those surveys with your shareholders or stakeholders so that they too can participate in giving feedback to the standards. Something you're going to hear is called an advisory panel. Advisory panels are composed of current teachers in the content areas, higher education members that are teaching in the content areas in education, and business community partners. Review and development committees, they are similar to advisory panels, just smaller scaled. Again, they have teachers in the content areas, higher education professors who attend those meetings, and then also business community partners. Our KDE consultants are involved in the work. We have our interim joint committee on education, which Dr. Pruitt, the commissioner, kind of takes care of the communication with that group. And then we also have something that's identified in Senate Bill 1 as a Standards Assessment Review and Process Committee, a SPARC. They are put in place to review and make sure that we have followed the process. They're not necessarily concerned about the content within the standards, but instead that we followed the appropriate process as we have reviewed and developed our standards. And then last, and certainly not least, our Kentucky Board of Education. So, as I mentioned, on every 6 years, this cycle takes place. For the ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies, this is the process, or what it looks like when the standards go through the revision and development process. Currently, we are through that first column and getting ready to start into the second column at the bottom where it says public comment sought on recommended revisions by third party. We are getting ready to start into that box on ELA and mathematics and hopefully social studies. As you can see, the APs must, in that third box on the far left column, must make their proposed recommendations or changes to the standards. They will submit that to the RDC. So the RDC, think about them as kind of like the gatekeepers before anything moves forward. At this point in time, our RDCs have, before they moved anything on, sent it back to the APs for further work. So as you'll see in just a moment, we've had 2 AP meetings in mathematics, 2 RDC meetings in mathematics, similar in ELA. Our social studies has had 1 AP meeting and 1 RDC meeting, so they're still in that first column process. However, moving to the bottom where it says public comments, we will open public comments on ELA and mathematics hopefully in the month of May, coming up next month, and we're going to be seeking public comment on the revisions that have been made. After that 30-day window has closed, we will gather data, do analysis, and then our APs will reconvene to consider what the public has said and their input. They will make changes upon those recommendations and forward it to their work to the RDC. The RDC will make final adjustments and send a proposal to Commissioner Pruitt. He will then take it to the Interim Joint Committee. The Interim Joint Committee on Education will also send it forward to our SPARC, that Standards Assessment Process Review Committee I was speaking of. They will review the process and then make recommended changes to the Kentucky Board of Education, who will do the first reading of the standards at that point. Before going on, let me just mention, too, that all of this information can be found on the standards webpage at the Kentucky Department of Education website. So any of it that you are wanting to access, please visit the standards review webpage. To go in a little more detail with what's going on, I want to speak to mathematics. As I mentioned just a second ago, we have had 2 AP meetings and 2 RDC meetings. Some of the major changes that we have seen thus far in the mathematics standards are the architecture. The architecture, you will note when it comes out for public comment next month, it has changed quite a bit. And the committees wanted to focus on ideas in those conceptual categories within mathematics. Further, these new standards look to accent the importance of mathematical practices, and they emphasize those procedural skills and fluency. So they want to build on the conceptual understanding and let students apply mathematics to the real-world problems through the standards. And again, as I stated, we hope to have those standards open for public feedback this upcoming May 2018. For English Language Arts, we have had 2 AP meetings and 2 RDC meetings. Some of the major changes, first and foremost, the multidimensionality approach. So we're really the standards are really focusing on the 3 dimensions of literacy, which were comprehension, content, and analysis. Observers will note that there are 10 new literary practices that will accompany the standards and that will be linked. Again, similar to mathematics, we have reconstructed the framework. And the vision that these groups have put together, it really aligns to the goals and purposes that have been put forth in the new standards. Also, the early literacy has become a big part in the revised standards. They're focusing on those comprehension strategies and the development of schema in the young children. Similar to math, we hope that to have those open for public comment in May of 2018. And social studies. We have had 1 AP meeting. As this recording is taking place, this webcast, they are in their first RDC meeting beginning today. So the RDC meeting is reviewing the work that was done in that initial AP meeting. Really, all they've been able to work on thus far is reconstructing the framework and developing a vision around what they feel is best for kids and what kids should be learning through these standards. We hope to have the social studies standards, the revised, open for public feedback or comment sometime in the fall of 2018. As always, if you have any specific questions, you can't think of anything right now that you'd like to ask, please feel free to reach out to me here at the department. My phone number is area code 502-564-2106, or send me an email at your earliest convenience at kyle.lee@education.ky.gov, and I will happily answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, at this time, we will turn it over to Pam to see if we have any questions in that Kyle can help us with.
Well, right now, we don't have any questions for you, Kyle.
Perfect.
Okay, Kyle, we will have you just stick around for a few minutes, and then maybe we'll have a question or two come in by the end of the webcast today. So we will go on and move forward. Before I do move forward, I do just want to talk a little bit about what Kyle mentioned. You know, as a DAC, you have a lot of responsibilities, and knowing what's going on with the standards revision and the revision of assessments is very important. But also other people in your district, your instructional coaches, your directors of curriculum, your chief academic officers may find the information that Kyle just presented to be very useful. So just as a reminder, this is a recorded session. You can feel free to share the link or the webcast with anyone in your district who may work with curriculum and have an interest in the standards revision. But right now, we will go on and move on to our end-of-course field test that begins Monday, April the 16th. And those are administered through April the 27th. Again, the end-of-course field tests are in Algebra 2, English 2, and Biology. When we test for our end of course this year, as everyone is aware, they are all online, and we have had several webinars and several resources published to help you throughout this experience with field testing. And one of the things that I'd like to share with you today is something that has been shared with you before. It's just the general timeline on when things should happen when you create your test sessions. Remember, the test sessions should be created at least 2 weeks prior to testing. The printing of the student tickets should be done 1 week before testing. So hopefully, if you are testing next week, you are logging in and printing those test tickets. If your district is choosing to pre-cache and that again is optional for many of the districts in the state. That should occur 1 to 2 weeks before testing. And then you actually prepare your test session 1 week to 2 weeks prior to testing, and then you start your test session the day that you're going to administer. Now, as of right now, we do have several districts that have not created test sessions. And if you are one of those districts that know of a school that has not gone in and, entered this information and done these steps, you need to really go in and get those students into test sessions. As a reminder, there are several manuals that are available to assist you. The DAC back manual is now available, along with the test administrator manuals, and those do include the scripts for testing. All of these manuals can be found on the KDE end of course page, along with the Pearson Access Next website. So if you go to the support, you will be able to find several resources and user guides to help you, create your sessions, to possibly answer any questions that you may have. So a good place to go is the KDE end of course page, and then the Pearson Access Next website to find manuals and other available resources. Also beginning next week, we will be out doing site visits. We have selected approximately 30 schools throughout the state of Kentucky. We have selected schools from Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, and Southern Kentucky. And we have notified all DACs in these districts of where we are planning on conducting these site visits. The DACs have reached out to their BACs, and they have given the Office of Assessment and Accountability staff testing schedules for those schools. So everyone that is involved in a site visit within the next 2 weeks, you have been notified, and you will be notified again a couple of minutes before we arrive to the school. So we will make a call to the DAC saying that we are on the way, and we are excited to be in your school for the day to observe testing. Now, this specific slide has been shared in our February DAC trainings, and we have also shared on previous webcasts, but here are the purposes of the field test. Remember, field tests are not operational. Students will not get results, but we are there. We want to see how students are interacting with the items, how the technology is running. We use the field test site visits for psychometric analysis of item types. We look at all the information and the data that we gather from the site visits to help prepare for the operational assessments next year. The operational assessments count towards accountability, so we kind of use the field test just to go out and learn. We learn from what's going on, and then we take suggestions. If there are any issues this year, then we change those for the next year before these assessments become operational. And then we just observe the administration. So again, next week and the week after, DACs, you will be contacted prior. Your phone numbers have been given out to the staff that are conducting the website. The majority of the staff are staff members from OAA, but you may have visitors from the Office of Teaching and Learning, and then you may have some visitors from HUMRO. So we do have some other partners with OAA who are conducting these site visits. The second bullet is very, very important. These site visits are not intended to be evaluative, okay? We are there to learn. We want to see what's going on. We are not there to get you or to get the test administrator. We are there for it to be a learning experience for us. So in no way do we want anyone in the room to feel that it's evaluative. We don't want the BAC to feel that way, nor the DAC. During the site visit, though, we will have an instrument that we will be using. It's called an assessment observation protocol. That's what we are calling it, that we will be taking notes. It's just on what we see and what we observe. It's a standard observation instrument that has been developed by our partner Humro, and we will be using that. In addition to that instrument, we do have some questions that we will be asking the students and the test administrator. So at the end, we will need to interview at least 5 students. We will inform the back when we enter the building that we will need to interview students and the test administrator. So again, these questions are nothing to worry about, nothing to prepare for. They are just based on the testing experience and how things went. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, who has just joined us. And Jennifer wanted to make a few remarks regarding the site visits.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Dr. Lee, for being here. We appreciate you and all the information you had to share. As Michael just shared, that we are coming out on site visits. We've shared previously that it is our intent to move toward online testing in the future for both high school assessments, and we are looking toward possibly elementary and middle school online testing as well. We are observing the field test administration this year because it's online, and we want to know how it is progressing. With the move to online, we are being very cautious. We're taking the approach to make a study. So as Michael just shared, Humro, our partner, our third-party partner, is partnering with us to conduct a study. This qualitative study will include the protocol that Michael just shared with you, as well as interviews with both students and test administrators. These data that we will collect during that observation will be analyzed, it'll be synthesized, and it will be used for decisions on moving toward that online administration. We are being very, very cautious about moving toward online. However, we are ready as a state. At the high school level, we have over 50% of our schools that are one-to-one, computer to student ratio. So at the high school level, we're ready. We also feel that we're ready at the elementary and middle school with some parameters around testing. So we're using this study that we are doing this spring during the field test over the next couple of weeks to inform those decisions. So again, these observations are not evaluative. Please don't think that they are. We have over 20 staff who are going to be in almost 30 schools. So we're moving toward and collecting information that will help us to make informed decisions moving forward.
Okay, well, thank you, Jennifer. And when we're out, we will be visiting very large schools with large populations, and then we will be also visiting some very small schools and some small districts. So we are going to see a wide range of testing over the next few weeks, and we look forward to being out and seeing you all and seeing your staff and seeing your students in your districts. So at this time, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to look over to Pam and see if we have received any questions regarding site visits.
Yes, we have. It really isn't site visits as much as it is end of course. They don't understand what it means to prepare a test session.
So let's go back to our one slide on the Creating the Test Sessions Guide, the step-by-step. This was shared probably about a month ago. It is a document that Pearson produced, and from what I understand and from the trainings that I have attended, when you prepare the test sessions, it is taking all of the forms of the test and it is assigning individual forms of the test to students. So you can't just create the test session with your roster. You've got to go through those steps, and then right before administration, you prepare the test session where it takes that roster and then it assigns students on that roster the individual forms that are available for that assessment.
And you may also recall that we have shared that you can group your students who have readers on the reading test or as an accommodation. So once you take the step of preparing the test session, then that's when as Michael shared, the forms will be assigned for individual students. So that once you take that step, you will see the students who need the accommodation of a reader and which forms they have been assigned. And so that's at that time you form your small groups of 3 to 4
readers.
students for readers.
Okay.
Good question.
And that's all we have at the moment.
Okay.
Great, wonderful.
All right, well then moving on, we just have one K-Prep test reminder. Believe it or not, K-Prep is just around the corner as well. In about a month, we will have schools starting their annual K-Prep testing. And this is just a reminder, this past week in our Monday email, we just sent out a reminder to districts to select their K-Prep test windows in SDRR. That is open, but everyone must go in and enter their test windows for elementary, middle, and high schools by 5 p.m. on Friday, April the 20th. So that's next Friday. That date is rapidly approaching, so please make sure that you go in during this small window frame and, select your test dates for those levels. If you have any questions after our webcast today, always remember you can send any questions to dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Currently, our next DAC webcast is May 10th. I'm going to look over to Pam one more time to see if we have any questions on standards revision, EOC site visits, or K-Prep testing window.
Not at this time.
Okay. Jennifer, do you have anything else?
I can share one thing because we realize that there is some anxiety, some nervousness about the online testing, and we have been in meetings just this morning with Pearson, and Pearson has assured us, given us every indication that all is well, that online testing will be successful next week. So we do look forward to partnering with you in the districts and in that preparation for online testing, and then with Pearson also. So we do have good indication that the online testing will be successful for our students and provide them a good environment for testing.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Dr. Lee,
Yep.
for joining us from the Office of Teaching and Learning. It's always nice to have partners from that office join us. Thank you all for your attendance today, and we will be back on May 10th. And we will see you within the next 2 weeks for several districts.
Yes.
So have a good day.
Thank you.